To the Turn On Your Inner Light show. It's time to stop just surviving, and it's time to begin to thrive. It's time to live happier and healthier. Turn stress into strength. Noted author Debbie Mandel will show you how to move beyond personal doubts and fears and into positive perception to turn on your inner light. Here's your host, Debbie Mandel.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to my show. Our guest expert is Barry Spector, a regular contributor to the Jung Journal, Culture and Psyche, and the online journal Mythic Passages. He is the author of Madness at the Gates of the City, a blend of myth and modern-day madness. This book will change you forever. Welcome, Barry.
Hello. It's my pleasure to be with you.
Now, what is the role of myth? And why have the Greek myths survived until today?
Well, we live in a modern world where most of us don't think about the great myths that actually inform our lives. Now the Greek myths, most of us think of as entertaining tales from a time long ago that is no longer relevant to us. But I'd like to suggest that these are deep archetypal stories that speak to the human condition, and perhaps more than ever, we really need to begin to become mythologically literate once again. As modern people, we have forgotten how to think in terms of mythological images, and we only think in literal terms, and it's brought us the wonderful benefits of modern culture, but we also probably anyone listening to your radio show would acknowledge that we also suffer from a deep sense of alienation. And it's partly because we live in what Joseph Campbell called a demythologized world. But the truth is, the myths, we still have myths that move through our lives and determine our value systems. It's just that these days we are more or less unconscious of them.
That's an interesting point. Also, have we made up our own myths?
Well, my book is the subtitle of my book is "The Myth of American Innocence," and it's a long story that's developed over 300 to 400 years to justify who we are as and the privilege we have as white Americans in a world with the American story and the American imagery and the American empire dominate the entire world. So we have definitely been creating our myths since Europeans came to these shores. But I would contend that these myths no longer serve us. In fact, they're contributing to the loss of culture. And what we need to do as modern people is to begin to realize that the myths that we've been living by no longer serve us, and confront the reality of our stories before we can begin to invent new myths.
So what you're really urging us to do is to go back to more what we look at primitive times, where you made a wonderful case for polytheism. Now, could you tell our listeners how that differs from monotheism and why we might want to go back to a polytheistic society, worshiping many gods, so to speak, archetypally?
Well, that's a long conversation, but I can think of it this way, that the human psyche and the psyche of the world are vast and complex. And from the point of view of indigenous cultures and tribal cultures and from our own ancient ancestors, we have really constricted our sense of who we are by in 3,000 years of this monotheistic tradition. That's not to say that there aren't wonderful treasures and benefits and great insight within the Judaic, Christian, Muslim tradition. But when we have constricted our sense of the divine imagery to the one masculine God, well, of course, we have immediately cut out the feminine. Now, the Catholic Church has danced around this issue for 2,000 years regarding the Virgin Mary and so on, and the Catholic saints. But for the most part, if you look at the polytheistic traditions of Asia and of all indigenous people and of our own European ancestors, you see a much greater, wider imagination that offers ideas and for the potential of the human psyche, and also for the psyche of the world.
What I was particularly impressed about, going back to polytheism and your book, was the role of women, because women, and they're not just suffering in our country, they're suffering in primitive societies. I mean, if we go to Africa, wars are being fought on the female body.
Oh, yeah.
And I think that your book gives this tremendous dignity to women that are constantly being objectified in TV commercials and ads. I mean, it's all around us. This is what we inhale. We don't even know how to separate that. But according to mythology, what is the role of women? We don't even know anymore in this country.
Well, let me offer two thoughts on that question. On one side of it, as the great teacher who died just a few months ago, James Hillman, wrote about, he said, when we have constricted this imagination that we're talking about, and we have repressed the goddess Aphrodite or Venus, the goddess of love and beauty, out of our life, what we have left is a great hole in the psyche, and we fill it with pornography, and we fill it with misogyny, and or even with its mirror opposite, putting women on a pedestal. So clearly, along with the 3,000 years of monotheism, we have also had an even longer period of patriarchy. Because the imagination doesn't, in a monotheistic world, doesn't have enough room really to acknowledge the feminine. That's one side of it. The other side of it is, we take our myths. As I said, we have our myths, and they no longer serve us, and we literalize those myths, and the easiest way to see that is thinking in terms of fundamentalists who take their biblical or Quranic stories quite literally, and they have all kinds of ways to justify the social order through their constricted mythologies, and of course it is women and people of color and gay people and all of the other scapegoats of society that suffer from this constricted imagination.
So you just said a very important word, that we take everything, our Bibles, our myths, so literally. We have lost the metaphor. I want to come back to that point after commercial break, and we will return with Barry Spector, author of Madness at the Gates of the City.
Now you can take Debbie Mandel home with you. Her book, Turn On Your Inner Light, Fitness for Body, Mind, and Soul, will help you decompress with healthy, positive, concrete solutions. Common life challenges are presented so that you can quickly find the help you need. Emotional tips, original meditations, and a fun and easy-to-follow fitness workout for each mindset. This revolutionary new method will help you rewire mind and body to take back your power. Get it on Amazon.
Are you overwhelmed with the burden of taking care of children, parents, or both? Are you taking care of everyone else except yourself? It's time to change your habits and re-energize. Debbie Mandel gives you an innovative and easy-to-follow program for good health and happiness. In her magical new book, Changing Habits, The Caregiver's Total Workout, Debbie Mandel shows you step-by-step how to find the optimal balance between giving and receiving, and guides you to exercise and eat right to take care of yourself. What are you waiting for? Read Changing Habits and start training for your life. Life does not need to be a burden. Get Changing Habits, the Caregiver's Total Workout on Amazon.
You're listening to the Turn On Your Inner Light show. I'm your host, Debbie Mandel, and I'm speaking with Barry Spector, author of Madness at the Gates of the City. So, Barry, how do we get the metaphor back?
Actually, I was just thinking, could I say a few more words about your previous question about asking about the role of women?
You can take any detour you like, especially about the role of women.
All right. Let me mention very quickly, Joseph Campbell in his great book, The Hero with a Thousand Faces, wrote about the central myth that he saw in all cultures, the great hero myth, in which the hero, it's a three-part story, typically, although it's told in 1,000 variations, but the basics of it is that the hero leaves his home. He goes into a liminal world of where he has to encounter great challenges and fight perhaps dragons, and sometimes he encounters the beautiful golden woman of his soul, and very importantly, in the third part of the story, the hero always returns to his culture and brings the gift of his insight or his enlightenment. Sometimes it's symbolized by the golden woman that he brings back to his culture. And clearly the stories of Jesus and the stories of Buddha are classic hero stories of this type. Now, what Joseph Campbell said is that he saw this theme universally throughout culture, except in modern culture, and specifically in America. And it's my contention that in America we evolved a story that is superficially similar, but actually is fundamentally and critically different when you really understand what's going on, and I'll explain that very quickly. In the American story, told over thousands and thousands of, tens of thousands of variations from as early as the mid-17th century, and told through all of our novels and dime novels and Western stories and detective stories and the science fiction stories and our movies throughout the 20th century. Again, it's a similar story. Look for the difference here. You have a community that is innocent, completely innocent and completely good, having no evil whatsoever, and it is mysteriously threatened from the outside by these dark, savage, evil intruders. The original, of course, with the Native Americans in our stories. And at the last minute, the innocent community is saved by this enigmatic hero who comes from the outside, and with biblical fury he dispatches the evil ones. And then, this is the critical point, he leaves. And if you're old enough to remember movies from the 50s, you might remember the movie Shane from 1953, the classic cowboy movie, in which the hero, once he kills the villain, instead of staying with the woman and making a community and being part of the community, he gets on his horse and he rides off into the sunset. And that's almost a cliche because we're so used to that kind of story. And it is really the basic American story. And I'm circling back around to the question of women here, because in the stories of modern heroism, where the hero is really not bringing any insight to the world, and he's really just restoring innocence to the community. Women, sadly enough, women have only one function in these stories, and that is to provide an excuse for the hero to exercise his extreme violence in vanquishing evil. And I think it would probably be a pretty short leap for your listeners to understand this idea and see how we have the American Empire has projected our sense of heroism and our savior mentality upon the rest of the world. Mm-hmm. So these are stories that run through our souls and our psyches as individuals, but they also are at the core of how we justify who we are as a nation and as an empire.
Well, doesn't every nation and empire justify itself? And don't you think the world is basically tribal from an evolutionary perspective? And I love the vision that you had at the end, how we can change our stories if we happen, and you put this if, we happen to survive the times. But that's very hopeful, Barry, and I wish it were so, but can you really see it in a tribal world? We all live in this kind of Tower of Babel.
Well, I think rather than using the word tribal, I think we live in a world, as I said earlier, where, or as Campbell said earlier, a demythologized world. I actually think in the tribal world, there are many examples of how indigenous cultures have evolved ways of encountering each other and encountering what I call the other, which is psychologically an aspect of who we are in our own inner souls, but which we can't acknowledge, and so we project upon the outside world. I think in the tribal world, they have actually evolved all kinds of rituals by way to get along with each other, and I think we've lost those rituals along with our mythologies. And I think part of what we need to do in order to imagine a world where our grandchildren can flourish, a world that isn't dominated by either fundamentalism or addiction or war or an environmental crisis, is we're going to have to begin to evolve new stories that we tell ourselves. And along with that is learning some of the ritual wisdom that some of our indigenous elders are still offering us.
Now, how do we come up with the new stories? Do we teach them in school? We're going to go to commercial break. I want to know how we do that, so you got a minute to think. We will return with Barry Spector, author of Madness at the Gates of the City. Dear listeners, I'm excited to tell you about my new book, Addicted to Stress. This is the message you need to hear. Are you addicted to stress? Do you do it all while everyone depends on you? Where's all this pressure coming from? It is coming from inside you. This is why my publisher, John Wiley, asked me to write Addicted to Stress, a woman's 7-step program to reclaim joy and spontaneity in life. This fun-to-read book teaches proven strategies to reclaim your life, silence your inner critic, build a healthy body, and reframe your thoughts to change your life for the better. Dare to be happy without the guilt. Addicted to Stress is easy to get. It's available at Barnes & Noble and other fine bookstores everywhere. You can also buy it at Amazon and other online retailers. We're back with Barry Spector, author of Madness at the Gates of the City. You see, Barry, in stress management, I advise people to reframe their negative stories.
Oh, that's a perfect thing, yeah.
And that's why when I read your book, I was so impressed to learn about the healing potential of mythology. So how do we get people to think metaphorically again? And where do we begin? I know we could all read your book, but you know so many people have diluted and dumbed down what we read and what we can absorb. So how do we begin, really?
Well, the media has that very goal in mind. I think it's happening. It's been happening in some respects for 40 years now, for 50 years. Myths change with very, very, very slowly. I mean, they take hundreds of years to develop and perhaps hundreds of more years to change. But what I want to suggest is that as things get worse in our culture, we're going to be many people will be trying to take the easy way out and just creating scapegoats and projecting evil upon others. And but many of the rest of us are going to just begin to look around. And as I said, there are still many indigenous teachers who are offering us alternative ways of looking at things. But one of the things I want to suggest is that, and we really haven't had much time to talk about it in this particular conversation, we're going to have to cook down our own mythology, in a sense, down to its essence. And when we do, I think we'll be able to discover that America, oddly enough, has been offering a vision to the world for 400 years. And when we, and you know, people have been coming to these shores for 400 years because they've been attracted by the sense of this idea of America as something that offers a place for a new start. And if we cook those ideas down, either intellectually or experientially, we're going to find the original, most fundamental mythic images of all, which is of the new start, which is an initiation. And I think that's what America might actually be offering to the world in the long run. And you used the word reframe, and it's precisely what we're talking about here. We're going to have to reframe our own stories of who we are. And I want to say directly that things are going to get much worse before they get better. And I think as a culture, one of the primary, and as individuals, one of the primary things we're going to learn to relearn is the old rituals of mourning and grieving, because we're going to be letting go. We're going to be shedding a skin, so to speak. America is going through a great big initiation, and if we are willing to go down into the darkness together as communities, as a nation, and learn how to let go of who we have thought we were, and to grieve and acknowledge what we have done in the world, I think that will open up a great new space for a new imagination. That's the benefit of truly being able to grieve, because it opens up a new space for the imagination. And I think that's one of the things we're going to have to be looking at very seriously.
I think that's very important in tying in with the notion of identity. We die many times in life. I've always said life is a series of recoveries, and we need to enjoy our interim. So if we know that we die many times, unlike a caterpillar that has one metamorphosis, we can have many. And right. I think that's the point you made so eloquently in the book. But our time together has flown. I urge people really to read Madness at the Gates of the City. And I sometimes do not make these comments on radio urging people to read the book. But this will really open your eyes and change that self-justifying mindset. Wouldn't you say, Barry?
Well, thank you very much. Could I mention my website?
Oh, please do. I'd be honored.
One of them is www.madnessatthegates.com, and that has several sample chapters and links to many, many other essays and blogs that I do. And the other website is www.BarryandMaya, M-A-Y-A, Spector, S-P-E-C-T-O-R.com. And that has many pages and links to the ritual work that my wife and I do.
Oh, I like that, the male and the female, but I really have to continue. Thank you so much. Wholeness.
Thank you so much for having me.
Affirmation of the week. Be adventurous and free. Give birth to new possibility. And now for the latest medical trends. A new study suggests that using cholesterol-lowering medications known as statins after having a stroke may increase the likelihood of returning home and lessen the chance of dying in the hospital, according to the journal Neurology. I'm all for that. Sugar makes you stupid. A new UCLA study is the first to show how a diet steadily high in fructose slows the brain, hampering memory and learning. But don't despair, omega-3 fatty acids can minimize the damage. Perfume ads, beer billboards, movie posters, everywhere you look, women's sexualized bodies are on display. A new study published in Psychological Science finds that both men and women see images of sexy women's bodies as objects while they see sexy-looking men as people. Well, we come to the close of another show. I have an educational website, totally free, turnonyourinnerlife.com. All the radio shows with the guest experts are archived for your listening pleasure, and when you subscribe to my free newsletter, you will get a heads up on the latest show. When you click on the site, you will go right into YouTube and can access the whole interview. You will also get a fresh new article on stress management and all the health tips that I don't have time to even say on this show, fully delineated, emailed directly to you from turnonyourinnerlight.com. Have a wonderful week and see you on the radio.